Yes, it is definitely recording. All right, so I want to show you guys a couple different techniques that you can use for your animal drawing. So you guys can see here I have the giraffe that was up on the wall earlier. So that giraffe is one that I started last year as the demonstration, but I never finished. And so I decided, after you guys were kind of harping on me for not finishing it, that perhaps I should finish it. So there you go, I will finish this. Alright, so the actual camera for this is pretty small, so you can see it only gets a very small portion of the giraffe itself. So here is the photograph, so you guys can take a look at the photo. And then I'm going to just hold up for you the picture itself, so you can see what has been done and what hasn't been done. And there's still some areas that are filled in, but they're not all the way finished. It's like the beginning layer or a secondary layer. A lot of times you're gonna go over some areas multiple times because you're gonna build your layers. I'm gonna show you all those techniques that we did earlier. You can apply those techniques in your drawing, and I'm gonna show you which ones would be the right techniques to choose. Yep. Plus, I want to show you a couple of new techniques today that are gonna be pretty important. So let's get that started. Let's look this and this. Alright, so if you guys generally saw the middle area on the giraffe is fairly undone on the face. There's a little bit around the mouth that's not done, so you can see down here. There's that area. I did this part right here with third period. So I don't know, do you guys want me to continue in this area on, or do you want me to move into a different area for you guys? So here's the photo, so you guys can look at the photo. Maybe you guys want to look at that and see what area you guys would be most interested in me showing you. The nose? Is that a general consensus? I didn't hear much consensing. Yeah, go ahead. Okay. Sorry, I'm just checking because I want to make sure that this is to help you guys. So that's why it's like viewer's choice. Alright, so I have a couple different tools with me today. So I have this piece of paper, which is actually really important. It's scratch paper. And that's because when you're working on your drawing, I typically recommend you go from top to bottom. However, if you're stuck on something and you're like, oh my God, Miss Jewel, I need you right now. And then I'm still helping somebody else, I'm going to say, hey, move to an area you can work on, which might be somewhere way over here, right? So then if I'm trying to draw in this area now and I've got this area filled in, I don't want to smear all of the work that I've done. So I'm going to use a piece of paper, scratch paper, that I can put on top of my picture, so I can put my hand on top of it without worrying about smearing what's underneath. And that's going to be really important. So I'll have definitely a box of scratch paper for you guys to use. So you guys said you want the rest of this area here finished? Yes? Okay. Just double checking. So one of the things I really like to do with all of my animal drawings before I start is a tissue rub. Now I showed you guys how to do one form of tissue rub, and that was by using the side of your pencil and doing a nice smooth gradient and then taking the tissue and rubbing that. That's a fast way to do it. I want to show you a way that takes a little bit more time, and I've already showed a couple people who are ready to start, but I'm going to do a different way. So I have a whole container of these little pieces of scrap paper. All it is newsprint, and newsprint, the graphite kind of slides off of this really easily. The best way to do this is actually tracing paper, but tracing paper is kind of expensive just to cut up for this. If you were going to do it on your own, I would highly recommend tracing paper. So what I'm going to do is I would take this and I would scribble on top of this, but should I do this on top of my drawing?
No.
And why not? Yeah, and since part of the, did you guys actually go and look on the rubric on School Loop? So I attached it to the assignment, and it's also in the rubric folder, and part of the rubric talks about neatness of your paper, so craftsmanship. So craftsmanship is how things come together, not just as a visual drawing, but like, was your paper free of wrinkles? Was it free from little marks all over it? That's just as important as the shading itself. Now granted, it's a lesser point value, but it's still important. So we want to make sure, if we're doing this technique, that I take my little piece of paper onto the table so that if I'm making my marks here, I'm not putting marks on here. Because when I try to do my tissue rub, those marks will never go away. They'll always be there. So I'm gonna take a one of my darkest pencils. So I have an 8B, but most of you have a 6B. Up front in that box that has all the coffee filters, there are all different pencils up there, as well as blending stubs and other things. You can grab one of those pencils. If the pencil's really short, like, you know, maybe I can't even hold the whole thing, I put the whole thing in my hand, then you need to sharpen it with a hand sharpener. If you put it in the pencil sharpener, it's going to get stuck in there, and I'm going to be very sad. Because believe it or not, pencil sharpeners are about 80 bucks. So please don't ruin the pencil sharpener. Alright, so I'm going to scribble on top of this, and I'm going to build up a layer of graphite that I can take off of this paper. So if you have like a little dirty paper towel, like these guys, the dirtier they are, the better they work. So you don't have to get a new one every time. So I'm going to rub it in circles, and circles is the approved motion. And I'm going to come here and I'm going to fill this in. Oh, thank you, friend. I forgot. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to rub circles here on top of this to fill in my space. Now, sometimes you might have to do, like more, what's the word I'm looking for? My brain is fried. Well, you might need to get into a more detailed area, a smaller area. So you might not be doing circles. You might just be rubbing back and forth to contoured, to stay within that contoured area. The other thing you can do is a blending stub on the little piece of paper for a small area. And you could then use the blending stub to fill in that area too. Okay? So I'm going to sort of continue on with this mouth area. It sounds like you guys wanted me to do right in here too. So I'm going to bring this over so we can look at the picture at the same time. And what I'm going to look at is there are a lot of the lines that were radiating out from this middle point. And there were a lot of different shapes that are sort of coming up. Like this became like a little sun. So I'm going to continue with some of my lines. And I'm looking at, if they are short lines, I'm going to use short strokes. If they're long lines, I'm going to use long strokes. So I'm going to use sort of a combination of short and medium strokes here to sort of continue coming out from this ray. And then you can see here that I have this shape right there already. And then I have all of these dark shapes. Now initially I had all those dark shapes drawn in my picture, but because I did a tissue rub pretty hard earlier, they all faded away. So I'm just going to do some re-outlining of where these dark black shapes go. So remember, you can have the wrong value in the wrong color, but you need to have the right shape. And then right in here are these little kind of half circles down in here that are come over this line. And there's a lot of texture in this area. So I'm really working hard to see where all this texture is. And I am doing some dark marks, but I'm not going as dark as I can at the moment, because if I go as black as I can and then I find out later it's in the wrong shape or it's in the wrong spot, when I go to erase it, it's going to create a really bleh, like ghost shadow. And I don't want that. So try to stay somewhat fairly light. Now, I want to remind you guys that oftentimes you're told that you shouldn't make mistakes. And so in the academic setting or the setting of school, most of you are afraid to make a mistake because you don't want to get it wrong, because you're told the only way to have success is to not make mistakes. So I'm telling you the exact opposite. The only way to have success in art is to make mistakes. You have to make boo-boos, because if you don't make mistakes, you're not going to learn from the mistake and get better. And that's actually true in all facets of your life. I mean, obviously some mistakes you really don't want to make, but if they happen, you'll learn from it. And that's the most important part. So I would rather see you guys be what we call an art risk-taking, being basically saying, I might make this the worst drawing on the face of the planet, but I'm going to take a risk because I might get what I need, where I need to go. That willingness to take a risk and saying, you know what, I'm going to make a mistake. Who cares as long as I learn from my mistake? That's the important part. You have to learn from the mistake. If you learn from the mistake and move on, that is more important to me than somebody who makes an art piece that's perfect. Because if your willingness to persevere in the face of hardship is so much more powerful than always getting a perfect A or a perfect drawing on the first time. And you're going to see that there is a whole category, if you guys looked at the rubric, that talks about perseverance, that talks about risk-taking. So I highly recommend, once again, that you check out that rubric so you know what you're being graded on. All right, so I've got these shapes in here. And now that I have these shapes, I am going to go ahead and take the blending stub. And I've seen a lot of you doing this with the blending stub and like destroying the tip because you're pushing down on it. You're like, ah! Okay, you want to use it like the side, when you did the technique side of pencil, you want to use it very similar to the technique of side of pencil. And you're going to go ahead and I'm going to blend some of these in because I'm going to do the push method. So I am pushing this down by blending it in. And when I use the eraser, I'm going to pull by erasing things out. And I'm not afraid if I make a mistake. It is okay. Now, sometimes you might want to switch to a smaller blending stub. I have a whole bunch of different sizes. And for some of you who have really small pictures, so like Tatiana has a small squirrel, she might want a tiny, tiny blending stub for parts of hers. And I've got those. You just have to check in with me. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and blend these. Remember, the dirtier the blending stub, the more sexy it is. It works better. So don't be afraid to say, that one's dirty, I don't want it. I want a clean one. So now that I've got this in, I'm going to really look carefully at my picture. And I'm going to see where are some of the highlights in this. So, and that's where I'm going to come in with the eraser pencil. So remember, you guys can check out an eraser pencil from me with an ID badge is all I ask as trade. And then just like I was drawing, I'm going to look very carefully for those changes in value. And I'm going to use the eraser pencil to bring those changes into my picture. Now this isn't going to be perfect because I'm going to have to go back in and add some more details. So now I'm pulling. So the idea of pulling is I'm erasing and I'm bringing things forward into space. I'm going to pull this. And I can use my eraser in a lot of different ways. So I can stipple with my eraser. Now if I just go like this, it's not erasing, right? I actually have to like push and use a little bit of force if I want to do like a stipple dot. So there is a lot of light and dark spots in here, so I'm going to go ahead and finish adding those light spots. I'm going to do kind of a stippling technique where I'm going to push and like pull little circles in here. And now I'm going to come back in with the blending stub and I'm going to look at where these little gray pits are in between my light. And I'm going to blend the edges of the two values. So when I say blend the edges of the two values, I mean take a blending stub and where the line, where you see the light and the dark value, blend them together so that you create a soft gradient. I'm going to come back in here and I'm going to go ahead and do that for these guys. So I'm going in between all of this. Okay, and it really doesn't quite look like the picture yet, does it? Nope, doesn't match, does it? So what else do you think I could do? Okay, so I just blended. So what else could I do? I could darken some things. That's right. So what should I darken? Okay, so just anywhere? All right, so where I darkened it before. So those little pits that I made. So I could come back in now and make them a little darker because I'm sure they're in the right place now. Can you guys see how careful I'm being when I'm doing this? I'm really taking the time to go through here and create these different little crags and these different little shapes. Now I'm going fairly fast because I have the experience to go fast. It's okay to go slow. Plus I also don't think you guys want to sit here and watch me draw for 30 minutes, so. Okay, so I'm going to continue bringing some of these darker shapes in. And actually this up here got lighter again, so I'm going to darken that nostril up in here. Okay. Alright, what do you guys think I could do now? Any idea what I could do now? Blend again. So now I'm going to actually use my blending stub like I'm stippling. And I'm going to actually, instead of rubbing my marks, I'm going to dot them to soften the way they look. Okay, what can I do now? What do I need to do now? Turn it in? No, it's not finished. Yeah, I could use my eraser again, right? Because I lost some of my bright spots. I might need to come back in here and add some of those bright spots back into my picture. I might even need to come in with a different pencil, like a 2B, and add some more texture. And maybe I might want to do like remember we did the scribble texture on our shading chart? So maybe I might want to use a little bit of that scribbly texture to add some of that craggy feel to it. And I might decide I need to come back, add some dark spots. So this is going to be an evolving work that I'm going to continue to add things to it and take things away from it. That even right now, this is a basic layer. I don't consider that area done yet because there's still little crags and cracks that are in the photograph that are not yet in this area. But this would be the beginning of these layers. And it takes time. Now, you guys might have noticed that my background is pretty dark in my picture, right? It's pretty close to black. And when I do a tissue rub, you can see that a tissue rub, I can make a somewhat dark mark, but I'm not going to get really black, right? So when you have a really dark background picture, I'm going to ask that you tissue rub the entire picture background. And once you have finished your entire drawing, you will get some seriously hot salsa. It's not hot salsa. This is actually powdered graphite. Now the powdered graphite can actually obliterate your entire picture. It can ruin it. Like, bye-bye picture. So that's why it's at the very end of the drawing. And it is with Miss Jules' approval that you can get some of the seriously hot salsa. And it will make a much darker mark. Yeah, it is some hot salsa, that's right. Yeah, at the very end, because this can really change your picture, for better or for worse. Plus, it's kind of messy too. Yep. So, yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and blend all of this in because I don't want to blow this dust everywhere. See, and they got everywhere else over here too. And you can see by doing layers of this, you would get very dark very quickly and get that really nice dark background that your picture would call for. But you want to do this only after you've already done your initial tissue rub and I've approved that you are finished with your drawing except for the addition of a dark background. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to take your guys' requests So if you have a picture you want to demonstrate, so you can see earlier I did some medium, hold on, I did some medium hair. I did some wrinkles from an elephant. And then I also did, somebody wanted to know how to shade something that looks blurry in their photograph. So I did, those were the ones that I did. So I'm actually going to move the giraffe. What I'm going to ask you to give me is not your entire drawing board. I'm going to demonstrate the technique on this pad of paper. Okay? Because I want you to have the joy of actually doing the technique. I know you're like, oh, darn this joy. The joy would have been you doing it for me. All right, so it looks like I've got a squirrel. Squirrel. All right, so let's take a look. And let's start with the squirrel. So here's the picture of the squirrel. So if you guys are not wanting to follow along, that's fine, but you need to be respectful and just quiet. Okay, so Tatiana, where on the squirrel would you like me to show you how to do some technique? I'm sorry? This area here? Okay, so the most important part of this is looking at the direction of the fur. You're going to spend a lot of time in art analyzing things and really deeply looking at what's truly there, not what you think is there. That's the problem that a lot of people make. They draw what they think they see, not what they really see. My first step is always a tissue rub. Tissue rub is your BFF. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to tissue rub this little spot here so that I can swirl it up. All right. So I'm going to start with this, and I'm looking very careful, and I'm noticing that the hair in the back is coming down at an angle. And this hair is what I would consider short hair right here. I would consider the tail long hair. So when I'm starting to do short hair, I need to look at the stroke length and the direction. So I'm seeing it's angled, and I'm seeing that my stroke length should be rather short. Now this technique that I'm showing you right now is really good for adding a lot of fur in very quickly. If you notice, I'm just making like little waves in my paper. Can you guys see that? Okay. And I'm going up and down almost like I'm drawing little M's. It's very important when you do this technique that you go the right direction of the fur. Now I know right now it looks kind of like, well, you've got this really dark shapes and you've got this really medium to color gray. Can't really see too much. This is where we're going to move to the next step and use the blending stub. Now I'm going to use the blending stub like it was a pencil. And I'm going to go ahead and blend on top of these guys like I'm drawing the same up and down shape, like the little M's back and forth. This is really good for dog fur, cat fur, pretty much any type of short hair that you're going to find on the face of an animal. Now for like a cat's face, like a tiger, you would just make these little lines even shorter and you would get that nice texture. So I've blended it out quite a bit. It looks pretty fuzzy. So now I'm going to take the erasing pencil and I'm going to look at the highlights. And with the erasing pencil, one of the things you want to think about is when I'm doing them, I'm making my strokes, I'm crossing them over. And when I first create a hair, I put more pressure and then I flick my wrist. And as I flick my wrist up, the line becomes lighter and becomes more to a point like the actual hair. So if you have long hair and you can actually pull your hair and look at it, you'll notice that when your hair is closer to the base of your skull, it's thicker. As it comes down to the end of your hair, it's thinner. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start by putting in these lighter hairs now. And I'm going to be looking, and I'm going to go in between. So remember when I did the little jaggities up and down? I can still see where those different jags are, and I'm going to go in the light ones. I'm not going to erase on top of the dark ones. I'm actually going to go on top of the light ones. And I'm going to cross my hairs over so that they create like little X's. And this is going to help with this layering effect. And some of my hairs, I'm going to make them a little bit longer. And some of them a little bit shorter. If you're really into erasing, they actually sell electric erasers. Yes. If I remember, I'll bring my electric eraser in for you guys to check out.
Use electricity to erase it.
No, a really good electrical eraser will cost you about 80 bucks. A cheap one, about 12 bucks. All right. Now that I've put in the lines, I'm going to go ahead and use the blending stub again. Guys, I am recording all of this right now. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use the blending stub again, and I'm going to just gently blend on top of the dark areas so that they fade into the light areas. That's going to make it look like that it's fading into the hair, so it's popping out. And then if I take a 2B or a B, it's going to have a much crisper line, and that's going to give some of these more definitions in here of the hair. So I'm going to look at that, and I'm going to come back in now and place, and I'm going to draw the hair in, coming out of the black areas the way I did when I was erasing. So I'm going to kind of draw them going overlapping so they lap into the white areas. Okay. And if I need to, depending on how light or dark something is, I might come back in and just lighten up a couple areas so that it is a little brighter and stands out a bit more. Just depending on my drawing. I can also do the opposite, and I can take the dark pencil and I can add a few more dark hairs if I think that it needs a little bit, to have a little bit more contrast and play between dark and light. And there you go. There's some short squirrel hair. Alright, Tatiana, here's your squirrel. And then which part of your picture do you want me to help you with? Like this part right here? Like that? Okay, so if we look here at this picture, you're going to see we have an up close of a dog. And you can see there we've got a lot of the, or sorry, husky. We've got a lot of these little hairs coming out of this dark. So this is one of those ones where I'm going to kind of gently draw the eye shape in because we're going to have a lot of darkness. Now, if I draw really dark, I'm not going to be able to erase those lights. So I'm actually going to shade using the side of my pencil here. And I'm going to follow the direction that I see the value going in. So I see there's a lot of this up and down motion, kind of like eyelashes almost coming off of this. And once I have that in, and I'm purposely leaving these little valleys where there's light areas and dark areas, because when I start to blend it, I want to have variations between light and dark. So I'm going to take the blending stub, and I'm going to do the same motion as if it was my pencil. So I'm going to try to keep the same arch here. Okay. And I can even use my blending stub to draw some of these hairs that are, so see, I can use these to draw some of those hairs going into the white. So like some of this area right in here where it's that soft look, I might just use the blending stub to draw those in and get that nice soft feel. Okay, so now that I've done that, I'm actually going to go ahead and take the eraser pencil, and I'm going to look very carefully, and I'm going to start drawing in with the eraser pencil those white hairs. So the ones that are over here are smaller, so I'm going to use quicker, shorter dabs to represent smaller hair that's shorter. And then as it comes over here, the hair starts to get longer. So I'm going to use longer strokes to represent the longer hair. Once I've got that in, I need to actually create a higher contrast between the white and the black. So this is where I need to be very careful, make sure I'm very satisfied with the other hairs, and I'm going to come back in with my dark pencil, and I'm going to look in between. So see how there's these little gray areas in between my white hairs? I'm going to now draw, almost like I'm drawing little black hairs in those areas to help those white hairs that I have stand out and look like they're coming out of that dark area. Having a nice sharp pencil will really help with this too. And for this, I'm typically using the tip of my pencil so I get a really clear line. So once again, another technique from our shading chart. So when I've got something like that and it's really standing out, I'm going to take a really tiny blending stub and I'm just going to gently blend these hairs going in the direction that they're going. And once I've done that, I'm actually going to come back in with the eraser and I'm going to pop out the light spots again. And sometimes the eraser needs to be cleaned off a little bit, so I just rub it with my fingers and get that extra graphite off, because when it's dark, the graphite just smears. And that's why you want to start erasing early on before you get the darks in there, so that you can have those popping out. I also like to turn my drawing all over the place when I'm working, because it helps me to stay in the direction that I need to go for my picture, and I don't have to worry so much about following the directions if I'm already spinning it around. Okay, and I might need to come back in here. And you can experiment around too with, like, if I use a really dark pencil, is the 6B what I want to use, or do I want to use the 4B? You're going to see you're going to start doing stuff like that, and it's going to start to pop out, and you get that feeling of that real eye coming here. And so as I get like the darker marks in there, you're going to see that it starts to pop. Okay. Does that help you, Jacob? Okay. You want to hand that back to Jacob? Yes, sir. Okay, so, all right. So show me which part of your picture. Okay, so in this picture, you can see there's a lot of different techniques. Guys, this is being recorded. So in this image, you can see there's a lot of different techniques and things going on. And so the area that I've been asked to focus on is right in here, because here you have this like spider web going on that's wrapped around this bee, and so you have both these grays and then you have these whites. So once again, our friend the tissue rub is going to come into play. So I'm going to go ahead and work with my tissue rub to start with. And then I'm going to just lightly sketch in sort of this leg over here, since I don't have anything to really start with. So here's that leg. And this is important because all of these spider webs are coming off of this, they're wrapped around the leg. And so I need to kind of shade in that leg first. I'm going to do just the very edge of it. Let's see. Where is my... Do I only have H's in here? Wow. Sad face. Can you hand me your yellow pencil, please? Thank you, friend. Alright, so I'm going to come in here and I'm going to shade the edge of this because this is where the edge of the leg is. So I'm going to go ahead and shade that in. And then on this side, there's a little bit of darkness as well. And then there's some medium values. So I'm going to start shading that in. I'm using the tip of my pencil right now. And I'm going to use the blending stub to blend that. Okay. And then I'm going to come in now. There's a little areas that are a little bit darker. This is important because if we don't have those darker values popping out, then the lighter values are not going to shine as clearly. You have to have that contrast. And all of these words, I want to remind you that we've been going over, things like gradient and contrast and contour. These are all things that will be showing up during your final. Layers, yeah, you got to talk about the layers. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit more value in here, and I'm going to use the blending stub again. And I'm going to go ahead and blend this in. A lot of this is kind of smooth, yet jaggedy. So I'm going to get that in there. Okay, now this is what's important. I'm noticing that while there's a lot of light areas in this spider web, there's also some gray areas. So I'm going to block in roughly some shapes that I see that are a little bit darker gray than what I have in the background. That is very important because as I go to erase out this parts of the spider web, I need to have that variety of value in here in order to see those whites clearly. Now the reason I'm being somewhat jaggedy with my strokes is because the spider webs, as long as I'm going in the right direction, they're very linear, and so that's going to help with the believability. Now for this, I typically would not use the 2B. I probably would go to 4B because I want to have the ability for it to blend a little bit smoother than the 2B. Okay, so I picked up a darker pencil just because that's what I have next to me, so it blends a little smoother. Okay, and so I'm really looking for all of those different shapes. And now I'm going to take the blending stub again, and I'm going to blend in the direction, but I'm also going to blend where the two values meet. So you're going to hear me say that a lot, blend where the two values meet. That's going to create a gradient going through your picture. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and do this. And I know that this is getting a little bit darker in grays than it's actually in the photo, but that's okay because it's going to help my spider webs to pop out. I'm going to have a little bit more value to work with. All right, so now I'm going to start first with my ones that are really crisp. So I have this one line that's very crisp that comes across. And then I've got a couple other that are wavy, so I'm going to make sure I put those in wavy. And now I'm going to start with the areas that need to lighten up. Literally and metaphorically. And then some of these lines are going to come up and over the bee itself. Now, because I'm doing such a small piece of this, it's going to look really strange out of context. All right, so then I'm just going to blend the very edge of this. So just the very, very edge of this, I'm going to go ahead and soften. But I don't want to do that on my line here because that needs to be really crisp and clear. But I'm going to do it on these bigger areas so that it flows in. And there you go. You have some spider webs. Was that helpful to you, sir? All right. All right, does anybody else want me to demonstrate? Okay, Brianna, bring your picture up. Kate, I'll get you next, okay? Which part? This part here? Yeah. Okay, so I actually did a blurry one last time. Do you want me to do this again, though? It is indeed. Like here? Oh, this cut here. Okay. All right. So, shock tissue rub. All right. So I'm gonna do the kitty ear. All right. So I'm gonna do the kitty ear. I'm going to. This is long hair, so I'm really gonna have to pay attention to the direction. For this, I am gonna use the 2B because it is a lighter hair, and I'm really gonna follow the direction very carefully that I see in the photo. Sharpen this pencil. All right, so I'm seeing that it's curving, so I'm going to start overlapping here. Now, the reason I'm not going to a really dark pencil is because I need to erase some of these quite bright, And if I go to the really dark pencil, it's going to be harder to do that right away. So this is kind of the edge of the ear here. So we'll just do that. And a very loose. There we go. And before I finish bringing the hair over there, I'm just actually going to shade a little bit with my pencil, a little bit of on the side. So I'm going to use a side technique here. And the blending stub. And I'm going to go ahead and blend into my drawing here. Alright, perfect. Alright, so now in this area there's a little bit darker, like a darker area as the hair is going over, so I'm going to push a little bit more on my pencil. Alright, so I've got some hair flowage happening, and now I'm going to use the eraser because I need to lighten those areas up. So I'm actually going to turn it this way because this is easier for my hand to curve this way. Now you might find it's easier for your hand to curve a different direction, so you're going to have to figure out what works best for you. So I'm going to curve it this direction. I'm actually going to turn my photograph the same direction so I can really go back and forth. I'm not going to draw from my head. I need to draw from the photograph. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start adding in my eraser strokes. Notice I'm crossing them over so they have the feeling of hair itself. So at the base, the lines tend to come together like little V's, and then they sort of branch out. And I have just enough value that these are going to shine through, but not so much that it's too dark that I can't erase my lines in. It's that fine balance between the light and the dark. Now some of these hairs are kind of wiggly, so I'm going to kind of wiggle a couple of them. And then some of the ones up here are shorter. Some little shorter marks. And now that I've done that, I'm going to come back in with my pencil and I'm going to look at which areas do I need to define a little bit more with some darker hair. And I'm going to draw those darker hairs in these little gray areas in between the white. But they might need to overlap a little bit. This is going to help define some of the hair. And it's going to help create the feeling that it's layered. So especially in here where it needs to be a little bit darker, I'm going to come in and add some of those darker spots. Blending stub. So I'm just going to gently dab these guys and kind of blend them out a little bit. Okay, and then I'm just going to erase just a couple more lighter spots back through it to give that layering look. Alright, and if I turn it around, do you agree we have a kitty ear? Alright. Kate, I will do yours next, and then Jada's.
Oh, I was just gonna think about the layering, but I'll just look at it.
Okay. I do also have a video about scales, and I do demonstrate a snake. So that's up there. Okay, so Jada?
Like the ear part where the hair comes out and start with it.
So this where it's coming down this way?
Yeah.
Okay, so here we have a lion. And the area that we're focusing on is this area where the hair is coming out of the ear. So once again, I like to start, anytime I'm working on a cat or anything where I have the hair going in different directions, I really like to start with the 2B. That helps me. So I'm going to go ahead and shade this in with a tissue rub. So I just gently outlined that. So this whole area is going to be all dark. And I'm just going to roughly shade this in, even though it's not the perfect shape, because I just want to get to the hair part. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to look at this first group of hair that's coming out like this, because that first group is like a little, almost like a claw, right? Except for its hair. So I'm going to sort of draw that claw shape in, and then this one kind of curves over. It's like a little waterfall. And then this hair is all coming down this way. So I'm going to start by, once again, drawing with my 2B pencil. And I'm going to draw the hairs that I see. So some are coming this way, and some are coming that way. Same thing for here. All of the hair coming out of this base is dark. And then it sort of flows down and gets lighter, but I'm going to come in with the pencil and give that some direction before I blend it out. And then this hair is all coming down this way, and this hair is actually pretty uniformed in a way that you don't see a lot of differences in the strands. I'm going to go ahead and just sort of fill this in a little bit, and then use the blending stub to smooth it out. Okay, so I'm going to do this part first because the hairs up here erase onto this. So you have to think about layers. So whatever's on the bottom has to go on the bottom first and then the top. So I'm going to blend that in, and then I'm going to blend these guys going in their direction. And now I am going to go ahead, and some of these hairs are crossing over, so I'm going to put those guys in right now. And then these hairs are coming out from here, and they're crossing over. And I know right now it feels kind of blurry and jobbly because I need to add some dark value in order for it to pop. And then these hairs are actually going to curve this way before they scatter. So I'm going to curve these guys. Alright, now I need to come back in and add my really dark value for this to pop. So like right in here, along this edge, because that's where the darkness is, we have this really dark intensity. So I'm going to fill that in. And then we have some other little dark pops that we need to add. It's right here, friend. Okay. So make sure if you're not shading if you haven't been given permission. Okay, so I'm going to just kind of come in here and fix some of that blending stub again. And then I'm going to get into the eraser again because there's some areas that need a little bit more light. And I might even consider using a 4B in this area to kind of pop some of this a little bit more rather than the 2B. And then of course once you have the hair of the rest of the ear going this way, it's going to create a different effect. So I would still be going in this and adding a couple more little hair details with the pencil, but this is the general idea. Okay? Alright. Yes, Kaylee. So Kaylee, you're going to be the last one, because otherwise this video is going to be forever. So don't forget that I will come around and help you guys in class. The idea of this video is if you're stuck and you're waiting for me, that you can look at the video that might help you.
The nose.
The nose right here?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're looking at the lemur nose. So the lemur nose actually has a very soft blend to it, so I'm just going to draw really quickly the shape of this area right in here. And for this one, I would actually go ahead and use the darker pencil. I'm not going to color really dark, but what I'm going to do is use it the side to fill in the space with a darker value, but not pitch black yet. And then I would use my tissue rub to rub around this area, and then the blending stub itself to work on that nose shape. And I want to have some soft edges, so as I come back here, I'm actually going to use the blending stub to soften some of my edges. So it feels like the two values are sort of fading into each other versus just having a very stark contrast. And I kind of truncated the nose a little bit here, sorry about that. Yes, it's a real word, look it up, child. My job is to not only teach you art, but to expand your vocabulary. Okay, and then on the other side of this, there's kind of a lighter area. So I'm going to go ahead and add that in. And I'm using very soft, short strokes in the side of my pencil. And then I'm going to come back with the blending stub, and I'm going to go ahead and blend these values now. I'm going to blend the edges where they're meeting. Okay. Now I'm sure that this is the shape of my dark spot, so I'm going to go ahead and add that in a little darker now. And I'm going to take the eraser and I'm going to start adding in those highlights as needed here. Shade into that so it feels like it's turning in space. There we go. And then even up in here, we need to add some of these highlights. So the way that I'm going to do this is I'm just going to kind of do a little pushing motion with my erasers. I'm just going to kind of push and dab in the direction of these highlights so that I get some lighter spots coming through, but I also have some really bright spots and then some gray spots so that we can see the difference in that value. I got a little too intense right here, so I'm actually going to come back with the pencil and add some value and use the blending stub again so I can fix that. And then come back over here, and the value is a little bit more on this side. The light is sitting over here, so I need to add it there. And then right over in here, there's a dark shadow from where this pops up, and that helps to make this brighter. Okay, fabulous. All right, guys, thank you for being really patient. I know that this is a long session, so go ahead. I'm going to be taking roll, so you'll have to give me about 3 or 4 minutes to get that done. You guys can draw, and I will come around and improve anyone's drawing who's ready to shade in just a minute.